How's it going, GBA sports super fans and probably just casual fans? I think you're okay too. We'll include you in this video this time because we're nice and we need the views. So, based off that, my name is Chris. I'm going to be covering a trade update and announcement. Joining me is the wonderful Adam, Andy, anything with an A. You could kind of just call him a real big a-hole. You can plug anything in there. Introduce yourself, a-hole.
You are the nicest person that I've ever met in my entire life. I am a hole from TNA TV. Check me out. Check me out on Twitter. I just got to a positive follower versus following subscribe. So just do it. But anyways, back to the point. We're here for we're here for a trade between the San Jose Sharpedos and the Utah Jasmine. The San Jose Sharpedos, they traded away their lovely Ferrothorn and got the versatile Hitmontop in return. I think this was not a contract swap either, correct?
No, this was straight 1 year for 1 year. Nothing fancy there. No trade, no draft spots thrown in there to mix anything up. It's been pretty straightforward. So.
So I guess we can kind of dissect the Pokemon real quick. So I'm going to start with Hitmontop because I kind of have a little soft spot in my heart for Hitmontop. I think he's extremely underrated. He has obviously for being one of the Hitmons, he's the balanced one. So he has 95 attack and 95 defense, and then they all have 110 special defense. So right off the bat, you can see that he's a bulky Pokemon. I think that is going to work well with Tom's team.
Yeah.
He has two fantastic freaking abilities. He gets Intimidate and Technician, and I think that is underplayed because in a league where, as we've talked multiple times before, you either are a strategy or not strategy. You're either well-rounded and be able to plan to be able to do multiple things, whether it be offense or defense, or you're a specialist and you do one thing extremely well. Hitmontop is the primer, the former one, where he can do a whole bunch of random things. Like if you want to run him offensive, he gets so many priority moves that you actually can't run all of them at one time. There's like 7 different priority moves that he gets. He gets Technician to boost the vast majority of those. I mean, he gets, let's see, it's Vacuum Wave. Obviously, you're not going to use that with a base 35 special attack. He gets Quick Attack, Mach Punch, Bullet Punch. Sucker Punch doesn't get the Technician, and then Fake Out. On top of that, if you want to keep continuing using him offensively, he gets 2 really, really good stab fighting moves in High Jump Kick and Close Combat. I mean, both of those are just crazy strong moves with the stab that, they make up for his lack of really hitting power with the base 95 attack, but they're really strong moves. So, I like him. I have a soft spot for him because he's just can go either way. He's hard to
Yeah,
plan.
and we've seen it used every season of the GBA and seen it used well. Steve and Cooper, used it well at different times. Cooper getting some great value, probably more value, but Steve definitely kind of innovating Hitmontop in the league. With rampant knockoff spam and things like that, you just switch it in, take a knockoff, then steal their item back, and you get the Technician boost off top of that, plus the damage boost, and that's some serious damage, and you still have an item at the end of the day. Um, Another thing you mentioned that I really like, I'm a huge proponent of spinners over defoggers. I think spin is the better hazard control move and utility by far, especially in this league where overwhelmingly few teams have ghost, so spin blocking isn't as much of an issue. And if they do have a ghost, they're going to have a ghost, so then you just don't bother that week. And Hitmontop is a fantastic spinner, one of the best spinners, really. It's not an OU superstar, but in this format and in this league, I think it's great. So I think there's a lot of really good value in there as well.
That's definitely agreed. And, you talk about the thief. He also gets a really unique move to get some chip damage on Pokemon that he can come in and intimidate when you're using a defensive Hitmontop, and that's Pursuit. He does get the Pursuit, and if they're switching out, I mean, don't quote me on this because I don't know offhand, but Pursuit gets what 1.5 times when they're switching out. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's something like that.
It's either 1.5 or 2. I don't quite remember off the top of my head right now, but even at 2, I think that makes it a base
It's
6.
it's actually doubled, so yeah.
Well, never mind. Well, anyways, it's still a useful move for coming in and intimidating and knowing your opponent's going to switch, especially for something that maybe is rocks weak on your opponent's team. You get that extra chip damage that maybe keeps them from being able to switch in again. Either way, I mean, I definitely agree with you that Rapid Spin is extremely useful in this league, and there's so limited actual useful Pokemon that really get Rapid Spin in a single-use league like this. So that definitely boosts its rating for me overall. I guess speaking of the good, we gotta sometimes look at the bad. The bad for Hitmontop is one, it doesn't have any real reliable recovery outside of rest, which is one of those things that you see a lot with walls that generally fall into the lower tiers of other other standard play. Is that when they don't have good recovery, they generally don't get used that well.
Yeah, if only it had gotten Drain Punch, would have been a whole different game.
I don't actually think, on my research, I don't actually think it gets knockoff either, which if it got one or both of those, it would be a much higher up Pokemon in my mind.
Yeah.
It also has a low HP stat. It's only got a base 50 HP, which, I
Yep.
mean, obviously you have 95 defense and 110 special defense. So you're already pretty
And
bulky.
if you're running bulk, you're going to be running Intimidate most likely, so that's going to help everything out substantially too. So, I
True.
mean, it's manageable. I think you brought up the point of its plethora of priority moves. Absolutely needs those with a base 70 attack stat. You're not going to be doing much in this league as it stands now. Maybe in a couple of seasons when more people get added and it thins out even more than it already is. But I mean, pretty much every team's going to have two or three things that are over base 100, and base 70 is just it's not there. You know.
Well, well, actually, it's base 95, which is good because it balances out. It's got the 95 defense, 95 offense. So that's how it evolves into the lovely Hitmontop. But it's still, your point is still valid. It's base 95 is the same thing I talked about with Cavalion with the base 90. It hits, but it doesn't really hit that hard. And I think that's one thing for me that is a big drawback. Is I say typing is a drawback for it, not because fighting type is obviously bad. I mean, it again, it's a great spinner because it resists rocks and then can come in and get rid of it. But when you think of having a fighting type on your team, you want something that's going to smack something in the face, and Hitmontop is not that for you, regardless if it's the offensive technician Hitmontop. It's just not really going to do it. It's a great revenger, but it's not a top tier offensive threat. And then I guess lastly for me was that yeah, you can get the surprise factor of that it can be offensive or defensive, but first switch in, you're going to know if it doesn't intimidate you, you pretty much know that it's a attack the top. If it does intimidate you, you know that it's defensive slash specially defensive. So
Hmm.
although that's good that it's very versatile, as soon as you see it once come in, you can then formulate a plan battle wise to go around it. So it has its own drawbacks in that respect.
Yep. I think it's a good Pokemon. I think it's an interesting thing to get on Tom's team. I think it definitely fits Tom's team. I think it fits his play style a lot, and I think it gets what he's going for. Statistically and historically, the Sharpedos have had one of the most balanced drafts out of everyone. I would say probably like the top as far as balance of offensive scary threats and great defensive core go. It's just been really good for the past couple of seasons. But in actual play and what Tom brings, Tom's started to lean very heavily on being a, primarily offensive coach and leaning towards hyper offense at times. And it's just it's very telling that he was ready to get rid of one of the best defensive Pokemon in, standard play in Ferrothorn for something like Hitmontop, which for his team is probably going to be usually defensive, but he's definitely going for things that are just naturally bulky and can hit reasonably hard, like Arcanine and Swampert and now Hitmontop. And it's really telling of kind of the play style and thing he's going for. and I'm just not sure how I feel about that. I do think picking up a spinner in the offseason is a good idea. He lost Mandibuzz this year, so this means he doesn't have to scramble for a spinner or defogger in the draft and use up any of those spots because he doesn't have a particularly high draft seed, as he did well last season. But it makes it interesting, like he's got that spinner now, but he doesn't have a true defensive core. It's like I said, it's just kind of a mixture of really bulky things that can hit hard and can be used that way. And I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it as an actual trade. I think Hitmontop's a great Pokemon, and I don't think it doesn't belong on this team. I'm just not sure about it as a trade. You know.
Yeah, I guess I'm looking at my notes for team synergy because again I'm a giant ass nerd and I write up notes for stuff. Something that stuck out to me is that with the Intimidate, he actually could potentially run three Pokemon on his team that have Intimidate, which is
Yep.
pretty cool. I mean, he has the Staraptor, the Arcanine, and he has the Intimidate Hitmontop. So I mean, that's pretty useful and can be actually, even though to run offensive, generally you'll run Technician so that it hits harder, but that still could be kind of playing into that hyper offense mindset where I come in, I lower your attack, and I can still hit you hard. Um, I definitely
Yeah, but a problem with that aspect is also if you look at his team and you look at type weaknesses, almost everything on his team is weak to types that are generally specially offensive.
that's fair.
So it's like you can
Fair.
intimidate things all you want, but when your Arcanine's weak to water, your Swampert's neutral to water, weak to grass, your Staraptor, Latias, and Kyurem are all weak to ice, and your Scizzor's weak to fire. Eh,
I'm
you
just
know.
don't be surprised if he's running Intimidate, Assault Vest, Offensive, Hitmontop.
Oh yeah, I think that's definitely a thing we're gonna have to see, but it's still just a very weird thing. Going on about weird things, let's go ahead and shoot over to Cooper, who got the most value out of this trade for sure.
Definitely.
Because while Ferrothorn isn't the versatility of Hitmontop, it is the specialty. It's the thing that does what it does well. And it's another thing that happens to be where this is Cooper getting a thing he wanted. This is Cooper adding more to the team he already has. Cooper loves bulky teams. He loves walls. He likes to play a little bit of stall. He doesn't play true stall, but he's more than capable of it. And I mean, it was a thing everyone talked about last season, and everyone was still talking about, and it was just, man, Cooper needs to get some offense. Cooper needs to get some offense. And first trade of the offseason, he just gets more bulk. He trades away his pseudo offense with natural bulk for pure bulk, pure wall.
Well, what's actually kind of funny about that, obviously nobody ever runs offensive. Well, I guess we saw it one time offensive and the offensive Ferrothorn, but actually looking at stat wise, Ferrothorn has one base special or one base attack less than Hitmontop.
Oh yeah, I mean a power whip can tear shit up, but
Yeah, I mean, I wrote notes for Ferrothorn, but really, it's you just look at it and go, well, that's Ferrothorn. There's really not much to talk about the Pokemon individually because it's Ferrothorn. The only I guess note that I have for him is that in a league like this where you can specifically plan for your opponent, having the four times weakness to something like Fire could maybe be a slight hindrance. But when we look at his team synergy, probably not that big of a deal because he has Chansey and Suicune to go along with Ferrothorn, which just makes him supremely bulky and just he's gonna be a nightmare to plan for how to break through all those Pokemon week in week out. I I just don't I see a lot of bulk on other teams, but those three together just seems ridiculous to me to try and work through.
oh, it's a core to work through. The problem is outside of, Zapdos, and I guess if you're running Crocune and you get some power up, Cooper doesn't really have the bulk with the ability to break through things. It's just bulk that's going to sit there. I mean, Cooper has his strengths, and he definitely, playing this style is one of his strengths. But I'm just looking at it, and I'm like, man, Hitmontop was such a good move for you because it gave you the bulk that you like, but it could hit things hard. And to ship that off for Ferrothorn, which, like I said, you're never gonna run that offensive. That's just not a thing you're gonna do. I mean, unless there's a very niche instance where it's gonna do something, it's not gonna happen for value's sake. You're drafting, you're trading it to get it as a wall. There was no point where Cooper was considering this trade and he thought, man, I really need something to run banded power whips. That's not, you know,
Yeah.
that's not the thing you do with Ferrothorn, and it's not the kind of coach that Cooper is. It's just very weird. I think it's, like I said, I believe this trade was both coaches getting exactly what they wanted. I don't know that either of them necessarily got things they needed. I think Cooper got what he needed less, but I could be wrong. This could be a thing that frees him up to do other things. He had to run, bulky Zapdos a lot last season, and which is unfortunate because Zapdos is great offensively. It is good bulky as well. Obviously, one of the reasons Zapdos is so great is because it is versatile. It can do whatever it wants, but he was in a position where he needed to run it bulky most of the time just to be able to have a solid defensive core. So picking up Ferrothorn is great in that respect, but again, then he loses a spinner. So he's back to now he's either going to need to draft another spinner or another defogger, and the list of defoggers that aren't weak to rocks is very thin. That's part of the reason why you don't want to run Zapdos as your defogger because it's weak to rocks. Most defoggers are. So yeah, I just looking at it, I'm like, it's absolutely what he wants, and I think it's a trade he should be happy about. I just don't know how it fits in with the team. I really don't.
Well, yeah, I kind of looked at that too because what you could potentially run is a physically defensive Ferrothorn and a especially defensive or even physically defensive Chansey, but that core itself right there is already lending itself to being super weak to a strong fighting type. But
Yeah.
then you look at the other three Pokemon that he has that we didn't mention yet, and I mean I guess you mentioned Zapdos, but we didn't mention he has two fairy types on top of that to potentially come in
I
and
mean, we have seen him run priority Cotton Guard Whimsicott, and that's a thing that'll take a fighting hit, but
yes it will.
is that really what you want to have to use it for? Like that's my thing is I don't know that this trade opened up new doors for Cooper. I don't even know that like in Tom's instance, like I said, he got a spinner, so now he doesn't have to worry about drafting a spinner.
Yeah.
That's not, and he already had Latias as a defogger if
He
he
actually
wants to.
he had three potential defoggers. He had
Yeah,
Lost
Scizor, yeah,
Raptor. I mean,
yeah. Like
none of those extreme.
he's covered on that front. He's got a fighting type. He's got some more bulk. He's got some more versatility. So I mean, it at least frees up a little bit of what he wants to do. I still think Cooper just desperately needs more offense, and this didn't open the door for him to convert any of his defensive players to offense. It just means there's more pressure on him in the draft to try and get offense, which is hard at this point.
Right.
A lot of great offensive players are already gone.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I definitely understand that. He lost three pretty useful Pokemon, although I guess a couple of them didn't really come into great use for him. He lost Gothitelle and Magneton, which are useful trappers for what he potentially needs for any of his actual offensive mons. Like,
Yeah, I mean, Magneton was a mascot pick, and it didn't work out for him. Gothitelle, he did get a little bit of work out of, and I think if he had it again, or if he gets it again, it'll definitely, be a lot scarier to more people, and you'll see a lot more people planning for it.
yeah, and he lost those, and he lost Cloyster. Sorry, can't talk. And those were I think pretty key for him as far as opponents trying to plan for his stuff.
Yeah, Cloyster had a great mix-up streak throughout the season where, Cooper would run it defensive, he would run it offensive, he'd run a mix of things. He'd run it scarfed. He really got great use out of that. And I think Cloyster is closer to being a Hitmontop than a Ferrothorn.
Agreed.
So it's like, all right, so you lost Cloyster and you gave away Hitmontop and you just got another wall.
I'm not going to argue much with that because I love stally slash bulky things, but I
I
can.
mean, I like a really good bulky offense, and I even appreciate the value of just bulky walls and things like that. It's a discussion I've had with Cooper, I've had it with Nick, I've had it with you, I've had it with Miguel, I've had it with a lot of the fans, and it's one of the most unfortunate and frustrating things about the league is that we don't have a way to highlight, the accomplishments of walls better. Like we don't have defensive stats to really, embellish just how good these things are at what they do. That being said, though, generally there's, a a balanced approach to team building that works in this format. It doesn't have to work that way, and every team does build slightly differently, but we've yet to see strong results from a primarily defensive team. Cooper had very middling season last season. I think he either it ended up being 500 or just over 500. Um, we saw Danza, who was the season one champ, run a very defensive team most of the year and do very poorly with it. And I think you need an offensive presence, and I don't know. I think Cooper's backed himself into a corner now where he's either going to go 100% Cooper and wall and stall up, or he's going to have to, really scrounge for some scary, potent offensive things because Ferrothorn's not going to do it. Like I said, a power whip's going to hurt a couple of things, but not really.
That's fair. And I guess to kind of round this out real quick, what would you say your grades for these trades for each person would be?
Like I said, I think they both got what they wanted, and you have to give them points for that, right? Because while there are generic formulas for things that kind of work, another factor is using things that you're comfortable with and you think are going to play well. And I think they both picked up things that suit their play styles. Arguably, Cooper picked up something that fits his play style more than Tom, but Tom picked up a better general value for his team. Um, that being said, I still don't think either of them are great trades. Like you said, I think, before the call, Tom gave away Ferrothorn for something that wasn't of comparable value, in our opinion.
Right.
Um, Hitmontop just is not as good as Ferrothorn, arguably. You can debate versatility versus specialization, but as far as value goes, Ferrothorn is a premier big name wall that carries weight. Um, and then, on the other hand, I think Cooper obviously got the big value, but gave away something that worked better on his team. So I think I give both of them a B minus because, like I said, they got what they wanted. They got things that suit their styles, but I don't think either of them are good trades.
That's fair. I mean, on Tom's side, I don't overly disagree with you. I ended up giving him probably like a B to B minus. Again, I love Hitmontop. I think that he could be a sleeper for how versatile he is. He fits into Tom's team extremely well with the versatility aspect. But because of the fact that he currently has three defoggers and all of them don't do it extremely well in Latias, Staraptor, and Caesar, because generally you're running Mega Caesar to run defog, but not really Caesar itself. I feel as though currently Hitmontop's going to be relegated to a spinner role almost every time that he's brought. So I think that hopefully I'll be able to see him kind of use that more than I expect him to. But for right now, as it stands, I think a B minus is kind of how I feel about that one. But I gave Cooper probably about an A minus for that because of the fact that between, like I said a little bit earlier, between Suicune, Chansey, and Ferrothorn, it's going to be hard to break through that. And like you said a little bit earlier, it does fit his play style to a T, really. Um, I would look for him to potentially try and find some useful spinner, maybe like I think Starmie is available actually because I think it just dropped off of
Yeah, it just went off the Sharpedo, so it's
yeah,
back in the free agency.
just dropped off the Sharpedo. So I wouldn't be surprised to see something like a Starmie end up on Cooper's team because it's offense, it's rapid spin, it's all that good stuff. But I wouldn't be surprised to see him get a rapid spinner, especially with Ferrothorn having the access to spikes and stealth rocks. So for me, I gave him A minus ish because I think it just fits so well with how he plays and with the other two really bulky things that he has that I just don't see it not working that well. I do see your argument with the he does put himself in a weird situation for the draft of not really being able to get much offense with they only draft 3 this year, right?
Yes.
So it's kind of a hard situation to get both offense and that spinner and all that stuff that you need. But I don't know. I guess I just see him as similar almost to Gubb's style that we talked about a little bit before, where he has and really Swaglev that they have this really good core going in that all they really need to do is kind of draft a little bit more of role players around. Although I will say that Cooper's probably in a worse situation than what Swag and Gubbs are in. So
Yep. Well, I think that wraps it up. I think that's a pretty good talk. Actually, pretty long talk for what they did. Andy likes to rant about Hitmontop. But that being said, thank you guys so much for listening. Let us know your thoughts on the trade. What how you think both of the teams are shaping up. What you think they need. What you think they got out of this. If we missed anything, that these guys are going to do for their teams, that you guys see standing out. Anything you think they need, and anything else you want to see from us in the future in these kind of videos, leave a like, leave comments. We do check the comments. Andy's been really good about doing those. The a-hole is great at, commenting back at people and having discussions. He really just wants your friendship, guys.
it's true. I want to be accepted.
Yeah, embrace the a-hole. That being said, thank you guys for watching, and we will see you next time.
Deuces.